Unshelling Medicine Podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another incredible episode. I'm Idois Tobeya, and today I have the pleasure of having Dr. Kristin Wild. Dr. Kristin is an esteemed entrepreneur, health educator, motivational speaker. She's recognized for pioneering work in holistic health and autoimmune recovery. So, we're all going to learn something today. One thing. Everybody, I'm so excited. Dr. Kristin, welcome. How are you?
I am amazing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. And, we got to have the most interesting conversation before we hopped on here. So, your work, what drew you to this level of work? Like, you could have done anything. You could have been a lawyer. You could have been a doctor, an accountant. Wall Street is calling.
It is really funny because originally I had, when I was younger, started out that I was going to be a surgeon. Since I was 11 years old, I was going to medical school. I was going to be a surgeon. I always had that feeling that that's what I was meant to be, when you're just created for something. But it was like a twisty road to get to this point. The reality and the absolute honest truth is I had no idea I was going to become this or become so passionate about it. And the reason I did is because I had no choice. I was diagnosed with an incurable disease. It's one of the most painful diseases known on our planet. And when you're living in a torture chamber 24/7, you're pretty motivated to find some answers.
Right. That rock bottom has a way of motivating, pushing you into your calling. So when you started looking, okay, because this is for everybody who has that, there's got to be something better, right? How were you able to discern the good and not so good information out of everything? Because there's a lot of noise out there, let's be honest.
Yes. So I basically went ahead and became a human guinea pig so that I could tell people what does work and what doesn't work. Because to tell you to be able to discern, no, I tried pretty much anything and everything, wild out there stuff. Because when you're that sick, you're just like, whatever, I'll stand on my head for 3 hours and drink water upside down. Like you're like, sure, I'll try it. And to this day, I still invest in research on advancing even further. Back then, I was basically working to pay bills, to pay holistic medical bills and, traditional medical bills, whatever I could get a hold of. So I was over $500,000 of my own money into figuring it out.
That's unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of people. People are seeking answers. People are investing, money, investing the time into finding answers. So it is not very uncommon, but 500,000, that is hefty. That is a healthy amount.
Yes.
What was the pivotal point where you're like, okay, you know what? I've learned a lot. I've come across all these people or all this information. This is the direction I'm going to go.
So again, I was told. I went on a spirit quest, went into a hallucinatory state. I was guided by a being. I can't identify the being, but it was felt like home and very comfortable and very much like they had my best interest at heart and gave me explicit directions. This was in March 2020, the month and everybody was buying.
Everything fell apart.
So it's really funny because the spirit told me that I had to go back to school. At this point, I already had my doctorate in metaphysics, and I was studying the existence of consciousness through the scientific lens. So very interesting field of study, and it helped a lot with finding answers, which ironically. and so the spirit told me I had to go back to school and that I was going to help the masses heal. And that I had to go understand the mind-body connection because it was the missing piece of the puzzle. And I had to have the vocabulary to be able to explain to people how that worked. And it was just like, okay. And so within months, I was in my applied psychology degree, registered in my practicum. My whole life blew up because that's what happens when you take the big leap. And, it did not go the way I would think it would go. It was quite painful and bumpy to get to this point. But by 2021, I was teaching people how to heal. And what has happened in the amount of time that has passed since then and now, I truly don't even know how. Like just like, and so now all of a sudden I'm well known and respected in this field. I'm being asked by government systems and private healthcare systems to help create this new integrative system that we've all just have so desperately wanted. So it's a very humbling experience. And seeing people heal from these mental health conditions and physical health conditions that they were told were hopeless, they were told were incurable, and they're healing from them. And it just blows my mind.
Beautiful. So we're going to learn about the mind-body connection. We're going to learn about that. You said, I don't know how it happened. You were not supposed to know how it happened. That's the process. You trusted the process. Ta-da, here you are, right? It was not for you to try to understand it. It was not for you to try to figure it out. You just had to say, okay, yes, I'm going to do it. And you did it. So kudos to you. So let's talk about mind-body connection. Sounds like a puzzle.
It is a puzzle, and yet actually it took me years to be able to break it down very simply. As we do, right? And so our mind-body connection makes perfect sense. Our mind, every time we have thoughts arise, our mind has a biological chemistry process. And so these neurochemicals are released every time we have a thought in our body. And that's either informing that our cells that we are in a fight or flight state, survival state, or we are in a health state. And when our cells are informed that way, then it determines how our genes behave. It just makes perfect sense. It's like, oh, turn this gene off, turn this gene on. We're in survival. So what does the body do? Oh, it's going to put all the resources into maintaining the internal organs. It's going and creating these thought processes that this is why it ends up looping, right? Because then it increases the size of our amygdala, which is, more that animal brain of being on high alert. And so even things that aren't a threat to us in our environment feel like one. And then again, a new neurochemical release. So it's like, adrenals is a very good example with the cortisol. It's just like poof. Once you've had that, your body's in fight or flight and you cannot stop it until it calms down. Well, in the meantime, those neurochemicals have connected to the receptors in your cells. Mm-hmm. And if those cells don't get flushed out, then no nutrition can get in, no health can get in because those receptors are blocked. And so we've figured out, oh my gosh, you clear these cells, you clear the channel, you learn how to master your thoughts, easier said than done. Again, this is simple stuff, not necessarily easy to do. This is a lifetime of programming we're overcoming. And there's a lot of unlearning to be done. And yet when we do it and we keep taking the steps, we develop the skills and tools that we can tangibly and practically manage our own health. So not only can we now reverse this cell damage and what's going on, our genetics can be turned back on through epigenetics, the process of epigenetics, well studied now, look it up. It's good stuff. And so we can now upgrade our DNA again and go even further than we were before. So we can have even more health than what our society is even used to. We have the ability within our bodies to be even more powerful than we already are. And we're seeing that happening. Because what happens is when we do clear that channel, that we have our thought processes are cleared, and then the cellular health is cleared within the body, and that's through nutrition, all kinds of stuff, right? There's lots of pieces to the puzzle. But when we really learn how to do that and become that, what happens is we naturally become more spiritual. The prefrontal cortex comes online, and that's what we call our ethereal brain. And we had this discussion before we came on here, but it is something you can't really explain to someone. It's ineffable. It's a feeling. But what happens is you can witness someone who's living in that and then you're like, okay, all I know is it exists. I might not be able to feel it yet, but I can see it exists. And this is what happens? We end up waking up and living as these electromagnetic beings embodied in this clear channel, and it's next level.
Right. It is next. It sounds like magic, right? So, for argument's sake, right? If, you had somebody who you were basically talking to, all our listeners, and the question around, so what is the difference between this and being religious or having a religious
So
practice?
you know what's so interesting about this is it doesn't take out religion. There's nothing wrong with. So this is where we're getting. It's like we're starting to understand. I'm doing work with the Diocese of the Catholic Church right now, and I can see the Holy Spirit living in there. I was like, you guys, yes, I like, and so and we're like bridging these gaps and making these connections we never thought we would see heal because it transcends our religious practices because we really get to the core and the truth of who we are. And, when we talk about Christ consciousness and all paths lead to that, Christ consciousness means like the highest level of God that's available to live through this protoplasmic body without trying it. It's like, so this is very much a spiritual evolution, but we can simply call it consciousness. We can simply call it energy, and we can call it the soul. It doesn't matter what you call it. It is. That's the point.
It exists. Call it what you want or what feels comfortable to you. It still does what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. So this just transcends. It transcends cultures. It transcends socioeconomics. It transcends religion. And this is where we get to connect as in humanity and create this new paradigm of existence and this new earth that we know we're capable of creating. It's happening.
It is. It is absolutely happening. So when we talk about, the mind, body, and, spirit connection in a sense, or the mind and body connection, let's delve into modern medicine. It brings me joy when I find myself in a space with medical practitioners who do value the existence of this level of mind and body connection, especially when it comes to healing and treatment, and who also provide a safe space for their patients to express themselves in this regard. So can you tell me about your experience when it comes to modern medicine in a sense? And, having these practices, it's growing. I see it.
Oh, 100%. So, I had difficulty with the medical system that we have set up right now when it came to overcoming this chronic condition because, at the time there wasn't really a lot of answers. I remember going to the rheumatologist and saying, hey, I read a lot about nutrition. They're like, there's no correlation between nutrition and this. And, so we can all laugh about that now. And it's only 10 years later. And it's like, obviously there is. It makes sense what you put in your body. Fuels your body, and like, it becomes your body. It makes sense. And so this is the thing is it's really speaking through the logic. A lot of people that go into medical, they're very logical in how they perceive the world, which is wonderful. We need people that are like that. If we're all just mystical creatures roaming around, nothing gets done, okay? And so it's like, really what's happening is because there's so much science behind all of this now, it's a lot easier to adopt and accept because we just want to understand how, why.
Yes.
And then when we're starting to have those answers, they're really becoming clear. Now we know for sure it is. We don't know exactly the details of how it works, but when you can admit for sure it is this is happening. This is what we truly are. And it makes sense, even from a scientific point of view. You think about minerals and metals in your body. Well, when you are this energetic being, you need minerals for the electricity to run through the body, right? It just makes sense. It's like,
basic metabolism, your basic human metabolism, right?
Yeah.
You have to be in balance. If your sodium is off, things are off. If your potassium is off, things are off. If your iron is off, things are off. And these are minerals in their rawest form. So they're not just naming them because, okay, maybe they ran out of names or what of them. Molecularly, these are what these are.
Yes. And now it makes sense. Of course, we're electromagnetic beings. Otherwise, those minerals and metals wouldn't affect us in the way that they do. And because that is what electricity requires. So ironically, I was an electrician for the first 4 years of my working life. And when I dropped out of pre-med,
What happened,
my
Kristin?
parents were so excited, you guys. So but it is so funny because it gave me this foundation of understanding, how electricity, frequency, vibration works and why we have these experiences when we're like, ooh, the vibes are off, right? It's truly, you can feel it with your field. And so we can't ignore that that's part of things now. And the medical doctors that I speak to these days, they just get it. They get it because, there's logic behind it. It makes sense now. And so it's like, okay, so now what do we do with this information?
So is there a specific advancement in medicine that you can, think of that really does adopt the practice of using frequency outside of the holistic practices? Because I'm a huge fan of, Reiki. I'm a huge fan of, anything that energetically heals, anything that requires you just centering and pulling in. But those are usually kind of, what's the word? Maybe auxiliary services in a
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
You do that as an outpatient, practice. Within the hospital setting, yes, we do pet therapy, Is there any practice that to date that actually really embraces this metaphysical type healing practices?
Yes, well, this is the thing. It's and, not or. It really are both of them go together. And so, the one thing I can recommend to people, and I knew about the science for a long time and I took way too long to adopt it myself, is earthing sheets. Because you can think about that. There's so many positive ions in our atmosphere and we're not being earthed. So when we touch the earth, the negative ions come from the earth and it heals and soothes our body. It reduces the inflammation because it counters the positive ions that we're building up. Like that's why you see a dog or a cat run outside and they roll on the ground and they get on there, is because they're picking up the negative ions. And so I 10 out of 10 recommend getting earthing sheets and pillows. You plug them into the ground jack in your home. It is super easy. It's the easiest thing you'll ever do, and it'll be the best investment you ever make. People sleep better, their mental health increases because the body now isn't working overtime to deal with all of these additional positive ions. It just happens while you're sleeping. And it is the number one healing factor for people because it reduces inflammation. If it's reducing inflammation in your body, if there's inflammation in your body, there's inflammation in your brain. That's why people get brain fog and it becomes more and more difficult to work through things on your own because you can't think like you typically would be able to. So the grounding is going to help you get more to a baseline so you can start doing the mental health work. So you're making better decisions for yourself of what you put in your body. And it's easy. Like you just go to bed. And so that is something that I recommend to anyone. It makes sense for everything. If that was in our medical system, even, huge for healing.
Right. So, what would your messaging be for people who are curious, but also concerned about judgments possibly from their providers? Because the one thing that I see in healthcare is that people practice in secret. And in practicing in secrecy, it can lead to sometimes spending money, too much money, or basically not being guided properly. Because I don't think that can be a mistake in trying to center yourself and balance your energy. However, maybe some guidance would help, right? So, what would be your messaging to anybody who is looking to, okay, I feel like I'm running in circles. I have this diagnosis that I really want to deal with. I'm doing everything that I can, but
Mhm.
it's almost like I'm hitting a brick wall.
Yeah. So I have a great story for this one. About 8 months ago, I was approached to create a private healthcare system here in Canada. And what they offered me financially was I would have had the opportunity to be probably the wealthiest woman in Canada. And I went through this experience with them and they were like, "You're the one." And I was like, okay. And, it was like something wasn't sitting right with me. And it ended up being not a match. They're still to this day pursuing me, and it's great. It's like what they're doing is amazing.
Right.
And also it was like, okay, there's just a piece of the puzzle here that I'm like, because exactly what you're talking about. People, they are all over the place with trying to find answers, and gets so desperate. And I've been to the point too where I was like broke, and just at my wit's end with everything. And so from this experience of having these people come to me over and over and say, like, what you have is important. We want to use this. We want you to run this. We want you to be in charge here. I was like, it kind of woke me up where I'm like, oh, I do have a platform for this. I don't need to go through all these other avenues. I can do it. So that's what we've done. We are launching it right now. This week is when it's coming up, where we're providing no cost and low cost, so people can start navigating for themselves and find some answers so that they can get in a position where they're at least aligned enough to make further decisions for themselves. Because that's the biggest thing, is when you're in this level of, it's anguish. And people don't understand that unless they've truly lived through something like that, whether that's going through a severe traumatic experience, whether it's going through these chronic illnesses. When you go through an experience like that, you can only understand it and connect with someone unless they've gone through it too, because it is very hard to describe to someone who's never had that. And so that's what we've done, because it was exactly that. We do have a full program. And the thing is exactly that. When people they're just not ready. So you have to sometimes give those stepping stones for people to just start creating that belief system that there is hope. You can heal. Other people have. Oh, I see this person like me. And so when we have these living testaments, and I would recommend to people to start Googling it, people that have cured themselves of something that you're diagnosed with. Start Googling that instead of your symptoms. Because when we get to the root of health, when we get to that root cause, what we talked about earlier with that mind-body connection and mastering that, pretty much everything heals. Because then, we're taking care of the viruses, we're taking care of the heavy metals, we're taking care of any bacterial infections, we're taking care of yeast, we're all of these baseline things that are compounding the problem, they all get taken care of because we're focusing on the cellular health. And so the biggest thing too is, Googling people, looking for those stories of hope instead of the despair that's out there. Because you can, you seek the truth and you will find it.
Yeah. But for some people, it takes longer. And from experience, speaking from experience, that's why I mentioned religion in the beginning. There's a lot of misinformation, I should say, in a sense. I don't want to call it ignorance, but it is a form of ignorance, where I'll speak from a Christian perspective, where energetically, when you're praying, you're connecting, or when you're reading your Bible, or even in churches, when, praise and worship and things like that. Somebody who may want to connect in this way may feel that it is an or is not biblical in a sense. I see a lot of judgment that comes from that. But it's kind of, I don't know, are you familiar with the hoodoo practice?
No.
So there's voodoo, there's hoodoo, there's other practices. So a lot of these practices are very much rooted in using the Bible as a grounded, So, however, people do look down on these practices or get judgmental about these practices as not being scriptural or of God. So there's a lot of judgment there. So if a person is facing, say, a conflict with either their Christian beliefs or questioning if they're offending their God in whatever way, in trying to unblock all these channels that either is holding them back or causing these chronic disorders, how should they approach the guilt or the judgment that comes with that?
Yeah, well, so transcending guilt and shame is one of the major processes in coming to ascension. And our experience of God and what the rules are usually correlates where we are within terms of, I'll use Christian terms, Christ energy, Christ consciousness. I myself, I attend church every Sunday at a multi-denominational church. I love it. I feel the Holy Spirit there. It's so amazing. And, and also some people would say I'm a Zen Buddhist. Some people, it really, it's about your intention as a person. If your intention is to do good, to be a servant of God, then you'll make mistakes along the way and you didn't intend to. So forgive yourself, make amends in the way you can, and keep moving. The beings that are showing up here with the elevated Christ consciousness are often the people you least expect. And it's coming out in people in all different types of religions. This is where we're finding the unity, because it's like, oh, you practice that, I practice this, cool. There's no problem. Like it's live and let live, is so long as the intention is to become more loving, more kind, more Christ-like. And any culture or religion who's going to say there's something wrong with that? And how we decipher the Bible, you can go and read one thing when you're at one level of consciousness. You can go back and read the same scripture when your consciousness shifts and go, oh, so it's starting to learn,
Right.
it's starting to learn how to use your own discernment. Let's remember that when Jesus walked our earth, that he had to go out and tell people, hey, y'all, you know what? It's not really cool when we kill people. It's not really cool when we have sex with our neighbors' wives. Let's not, okay? Beating people, we could skip it.
Right.
And so it's like we were in a different level of consciousness as humanity. So it's like now we hope that a lot of us have evolved to the point where we're like, yeah, no, duh. It's like, and so now we're ready for more information. So we're going to read the Bible in a new way. People who are really in this space where they're afraid of new information, they're afraid of adapting their thought process, that's trauma. Yeah. Because the truth equals love. The truth, when they say the truth will set you free, it will. And, the people out there who truly want to seek the truth have no interest in convincing anyone about it, because you live it. And it's like, take it or leave it. So that's the thing, is not everyone's coming. Not everyone's going to ascend. I mean, if we want to go back to the Bible, let's take a look at Revelations. We're living in it, y'all. And it's like,
wow. Are we or are we?
Yes, like, hello. And it's like, it's like everything predicted in the Bible is like, check, check, check. And so we're here. And people are like, oh no, we're here. It's like, oh yes, we're here. Remember that all will be held in the church. Everybody's fine. It's going to be good. Like, it's like, yes. So we're creating it. We're creating the new heaven on earth. And that takes adaptation. Yes. And there's nothing to be afraid of. And so people's experience of those things and their discernment of what the Bible was saying, the whole thing's in parables and metaphors. Yeah. So it's going to mean something to you when you shift. And so when you're feeling those fears and anxiety, it just shows it's something that you have to transform within. Yeah. And then we start to really drop judgment. We stop trying to tell other people what to think and feel. We do our own thing. We magnetize the other people like that with us. And that's how this grows. So it's an invitation to come and explore and learn together. Because guess what? No one is the one expert.
That is so good. No one is the one expert. And, you touched on something that I was hoping this conversation would get to at some point, trauma, right? Traumatic events are things that we just feel like it's a snippet in time, but it's not. Traumatic events are so visceral. They become such a cellular part of us that it takes a while, to overcome that. And especially with things that happen generationally. So those things are not easy to work through. Those things are not, they're not easy to work through. So when it comes to the fear, that is attached to trauma. The one thing that I see, and I am going to see if you do agree and also have something to add to this, is that trauma is a known feeling, right? So if I know sitting in this thought and, confronting this scenario is going to be a re-injury to that wound, I'd rather just leave it alone because you know what? It doesn't feel good. Unfortunately, getting to the other side of that wound requires going through it, right? As painful as it may be, you have to acknowledge it, sit in it, steep in it a little bit, understand why these feelings are these feelings. So, is there anything that you do to help, people that you come across or encounter to walk through that trauma? And would you agree with, my assessment of that? Or do you have anything else other than what I just said?
Yeah, so this is my forte. It's like, this is the thing. It's been traumatized generation raising traumatized generation raising traumatized generation. So we can all admit we're all traumatized and our genetics are traumatized. This is why we're at the point where we're not even going to see people reproduce in the next couple generations because the genes are so traumatized that it will shut down our race. And so, there is a biochemical process that goes on here. So that they're like, oh, I don't believe in generational trauma. It lives in your cells. It lives in your DNA. It's how we survive as humanity, as a species in general. And this is all animals. This happens. It's through cellular health. Do you know that there is elephants spontaneously evolving that are born without tusks? Because the cells, the genetics informed, we have tusks, we die. So elephants being born without tusks. So this is what's happening with us as well. We are the lucky ones, everybody, that gets to wake up and we get to take responsibility for everything that's ever happened and turn it all around. Yeah. Congratulations, you've been chosen. And so... And so this is the part, ascension is accountability.
Yeah.
So we have to be accountable. It doesn't, and so the traumatic experiences we can admit, they've happened. So now how are we going to choose to live life anyway? Right. What are we going to do to take responsibility for ourselves and be an example to the next generation? Right. Not do this, do that, not pointing the finger, not saying this is bad, this is good, I'm this way because someone did this. Right. Remember it, and people have gone through horrifying things, me included. I have gone through some stuff where people would look at me and say, you have been highly victimized. Yes, I have. But I'm not going to play that victim role because that doesn't do anything for anybody. Right. And so biggest thing for us to improve our genetic health again and get our humanity back on track is mastering that. And we are dissolving those past traumas. And it doesn't necessarily mean picking at the wound. Right. If it comes up to be dealt with, you're right. The only way out is through, and the only way through is in. Everything you see out there that makes you feel uncomfortable shows you got work to do in here. Because if you have a gun without any gunpowder, that bullet's not going anywhere. Right. So what we have to do is remove the gunpowder. Right.
So, and, you said a few things. Finish your thought. I have a few things loading.
Yes, by all means.
Yeah. When it comes to, evolving, right? Evolving and being chosen to change things, change bad patterns, change bad behaviors. Unfortunately, I don't think all humans got that memo.
No.
So, yeah. So, unfortunately, because all humans did not get that memo, I'm just going to talk about our world and how it sits today. Elephants have now evolved to not grow tusks because you know what? Humans are, despicable enough to kill us for a tusk, right? However, when it comes to humans and treating other humans poorly, it doesn't seem to have changed much. However, we still expect the people or a person or group of people who are treating poorly to just hush, Don't talk about me treating you poorly, right? So very, very blatantly, I'm talking about the transatlantic slave trade, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and its impact on,
Mm.
the communities. Because I'm in America, I'm going to talk about the Black experience and the African
Yeah.
American experience. Yes, I am Nigerian. I came to America as almost an adult, but however, I am a Black woman first, because when I step outside, what do they see? My skin color first,
Yeah.
right? And this traumatic experience, however, I did not experience it generationally. However, there are things that have affected how I parent, right?
Mhm.
And I can only imagine. I know the history. I've lent myself to learn that history, that traumatic history of, people that look like me, my cousins and aunties far removed, I will call them, right? But they're still people, a lot of them were, from Africa. I've heard this repeated: stop talking about it, stop talking about it. However, there's still that bad behavior, that bad treatment, for lack of a better word, detasking, still going on. So what would your feedback be to somebody who lives in a society that is unjust? However, they do understand they must survive that society and ascend in order to not let their immediate environment affect them in such a way that it actually breaks them. Because that's trauma on a different level. That is trauma on steroids,
Yeah.
So
It is.
how do we go about this?
Okay. So, first of all, I'm so sorry that that's part of your life. That's something you have to consider when you go into society. That's something that, although I have been through a lot and had my own adversity, that's something I've never had to face. I didn't even really understand it until I saw other people experiencing it, because I'm a white woman. No one ever assumes I'm stealing. No one ever questions my motives. I get great service everywhere I go, and so I'm like, the world's lovely. And then, I'm out with my friends that are multicultural, all different types of races and cultures and communities. And to me, I'm like, dude, more the merrier. This is so amazing. We get to learn from each other, right? And then witnessing what they go through and how right in front of me, we're treated like two totally different people. And ironically, I'm not even the most successful one there. All the people I'm with, I'm like, hello. And it's like, I'm like, here's these people just and they're being treated like it just blows my mind, right? And so I'm really sorry that that's how you live life. It sucks. And this is the thing, is we all have these burdens to bear in taking responsibility for yourselves. So I live by a motto, and you're welcome to adopt it too. And it's do no harm, take no shit. So it's walking that fine line. You have that open, beautiful heart, and you are a fierce protector of it. And so it's like you give people the benefit of the doubt, and the second they show you, you either say something if you have to, or you avoid them completely. And this is how we snuff this out. We avoid it. We work together to go in the other direction. Okay, what's the solution? What's the positivity? You and I having this conversation and being open about what is happening, even though we are from different cultural backgrounds, different countries, we can connect on, we want to see this planet in its glory that it can be.
Right.
And we are going to work together, and we are going to take that leap of faith, and we are going to walk in God's grace and surrender to that hand in hand.
Right.
And guess what? That's contagious, because we're having way more fun over here. And so so people are like, hey, and it's that 80-20 rule. 20% of a population adopts that ideology, it will flip it. And the ones that choose not to, we will just see people live in different dynamics. They live in different ways of being, all in the same place at the same time. So we can choose to go, no. And it's when you're not the one that's affected by that, but you can be an ally and stand for someone. When you see abuse happening and you are standing there as a bystander and you don't say or do something about it, you're participating.
Absolutely. And that's what people need to understand. Okay. We need more action and less performative behavior. I have been blessed enough to have people that would mention my name in a room if I were not there, that do not look like me, people that understand my worth, people that understand what I bring to the table, people that understand my intelligence and my genius, right? So these are the kinds of people, these are actions that people who may not necessarily have your or anybody's degree of for lack of a better word, privilege keep coming to mind. If I can walk on the street and somebody crosses to the other side of the street, right? If you're walking with me, if you're being afraid, I don't want you getting in fights or anything. But in a situation where you can speak up and address the behavior, do so, right? We've all experienced this performative, activism that only happens at a time of crises as opposed to when the work needs to be done. So if we can learn anything from elephants, let's evolve. That's it. Let's raise our consciousness. Let's understand we need each other, and let's, please, for the love of everything good, including God, let's evolve, please. So yeah, I'm glad we had that part of the conversation, because most of the trauma that I do see, especially in healthcare, which is why I'm a very big advocate, is that people are afraid that they don't trust the healthcare system first and foremost because of history of trauma, right? Then when they do go to the healthcare, and healthcare has a lot to offer. You and I talked about this. We have plenty of advancement in healthcare today that actually has, helped people recover, live longer, save their lives from, infections and the whole gamut, right? However, there's still patient histories that, happen as a by the way. Like today, one of my students had a patient, and the patient had a host, he had a long history of cancer that was not captured. It wasn't in his chart. So when she did the chart research, none of this was in there. However, this patient has been grouchy for the past 2 days, telling everybody off, threatening to leave against medical advice because I am sick and tired. Nobody's listening to me. Right? That was a conversation. And I told my student, I need you to be that button that turns him off. Right? Talk to him, engage him, listen to him, ask open-ended questions. And she did that. And the point that turned the whole interaction around was when he said something about his daughter. So she's like, "Oh, tell me about your daughter." That changed the conversation. Come to find out, she's his pride and joy. She's a nurse too. She works at this fertility clinic. She's so great. When I was first diagnosed of this cancer and that cancer and this cancer, and did you know I was a hairstylist? Yes. And because we were wearing gloves and we were using dyes, I was predisposed to all these cancers. None of that was listed in his health record. Right. Why is that?
Yeah. So that's it too. That's something I learned in psychology as well, is like, do not judge someone by their record. It's like, you have no idea. And it's all biased too. Whoever was writing the record at the time, they could have been in a mood. They could have been rushed. They coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's like, there's so many things, so many factors.
Right.
And so that's when we're trained to look at someone that way. And, I myself have to constantly stay aligned with that. I have a lot of people that I work with and help. I'm still boots on the ground. I work directly with people, and I'm running this whole other integrative health platform, right? And so, even myself, I have to get centered and aligned and be like, you are meeting with a person, heart to heart. This isn't just like a number. This isn't just like, oh, here's what they wrote down. This is they're a real person.
Right.
And often exactly that, our health, our physical health, it all stems down to something far, far deeper. And so we just have to keep talking, and we have to show each other trust and respect. But if someone is not interested in participating in that way,
leave.
You don't need to convince them.
Right.
good, cool, stay over there. Now I know that's where you are. Okay, bye.
Right.
Like, see you never. There's,
Right.
there's like plenty of people that you can have conversations with that are uplifting, solution oriented,
Right.
want to do it.
Right.
And I heard the other day this saying that I thought was so cute. It was like, you can take a pit stop in Pity Town, but you cannot stay the night.
Oh my goodness. I tell my students this all the time. Oh, I say, you're on that bus. Yeah, ride right through that bus.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You can come out, look around, but do not let that
Have
bus
a cup of coffee, cry in it, and leave. Like, what?
I tell my students this all the time. Feel all the feels you need to feel. However, I need you to like, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, feel it.
And then get
moment.
together.
It hurts. Yes, it's
I know. It hurts so good. And you're like, let's go.
I'm like, let's go. You know, let's not stay. Don't stay tonight. Don't unpack. Just take a look. Browse.
Yeah.
Okay, Pity Town still here. Great.
Still available. And that's it. We're human. You know, I teach this, and I myself, some days I wake up in anxiety. Like, we're in tough times right now. Like this, you know, and what do? I do everything I can to get back in alignment before I'm meeting with people, before I'm pouring myself into people, because we affect each other in that way. So our number one priority is to get aligned within ourselves.
And I think that the people don't think it's normal to fall apart. It is very, very normal to fall apart.
Superhuman. It's a superhuman thing to do.
It's the best thing you can do, because there's something about that put together energy. When you fall apart and let yourself fall apart, goodness, when you put yourself back together, you're like, oh, I needed that. Yes, I got
you
this.
need the erosion. It has to, like, you know, how do you have growth without erosion? It doesn't make it, but we don't like the erosion part. We're like, well, just take the growth. Thank you. And it's like, no, you need everything to crumble, tear you apart.
Like that.
How else would we have all started to wake up now, right? We had to get to the point where we're like, okay.
I love this. So please, everybody who you're listening, it is okay to fall apart. Gather yourself and say, you know what's next? Actually, that fall apart has a way of redirecting you and refocusing you that is so beautiful, so gorgeous. You know, get yourself back, focus, and say, okay, where do I need to go? What do I need to do? Let's get it going. This conversation was so good, Dr. Kristin. I need us to have more of these, please. So when it comes to working with you, the meaty goody part. So you are in Canada. However, if anybody around the world is listening to us and they're at that precipice of making a decision, you know what? Now that I'm comfortable to know that I'm not doing anything outside of my religion, outside of, you know, my belief system, any of that stuff, how do they get in contact with you, connection with you, to work with you?
Yes, it's super easy. You can go to my website, drkristinwild.com, all I's, no E's, and you can get access to Modern Health Solution through there. And we have just an amazing core team at this point. And we are developing a no-cost and low-cost integrative healthcare system. And it's digital, it's around the world, and it will plug into any other modalities that you're working with. That's the whole point. It transcends that. And from there, if you are someone who's dealing with a chronic illness, such as autoimmune conditions, we have the highest success rate in the world in helping people overcome what are thought to be incurable diseases. So it's pretty great. And so we do have a full program for that. But I say just get in there. Come and meet the people that are like you. Come and meet the people that are walking that path. This is for people who are determined to heal. They're determined to leave this earth better than when they arrived. You know who you are. You're welcome. You're invited, and it's come and see. It's 100% free. So I don't know. It's really a no-brainer.
You will learn something. So just go learn. I'm a sucker for knowledge. Anything that can teach me and I can sit, marinate, and, you know, take from it what I need to take from it. It doesn't hurt, right? So what can you get
to know?
You know, you're going to get ways to treat yourself better, you know, forgive yourself and heal, right? So we all need stability. And stability starts from you. I cannot make you stable. You can't make the person next to you stable, and
Mm.
so on and so forth. So it all
Mhm.
starts from here. How you
Yeah.
react to things, how you feed into things, you don't react to things. It
Mhm.
all starts from you. And I love this holistic kind of discussion and how they're really, really integrated into the modern medicine, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Modern
Yeah.
medicine is great.
I
Holistic.
know. It's like, what are we fighting about? It's
What
going
are
great.
we doing? And to be somebody that believes in both is kind of like that is one and the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I would need my patients, to understand how to, balance themselves. So if
Mhm.
I'm teaching them self-management strategies
Yeah.
is in addition to that.
Mhm.
We all win. The patient wins, the doctors
Exactly.
win, the insurance company wins, the hospital wins. We all win, right?
Yes.
So
And there's no reason why that can't be in everything that we do. Yes, it's the extra mile. Yes, it's extra work. And the rewards are beyond comprehension.
I
It's
don't
that
I don't
short.
really think so, Dr. Kristen. It's not the extra mile because you think about it when a patient is discharged from the hospital, one thing is to have that continuity of care,
Mhm.
right? So if we are referring the patients to follow up with their primary care physicians when they get discharged, or have a visiting nurse come in for either wound care, whatever it
Mhm.
is. Some people have antibiotics at home, right?
Mhm.
These practices are things that, the patient can be taught or have somebody come maybe one time
Mhm.
to reinforce things that they can practice for a lifetime.
Yes.
We're already
Yes.
referring.
I
So
love
it's not that far fetched.
It's so good. I love it. It's so fun to see. It's just happening everywhere. I'm like, okay. Like,
Just like you're talking. It's
it's
really
just
not
like,
that far fetched, to be honest with you. It's not. We're already doing it.
yes, it's so good. And really it's this short-term pain, long-term gain, right?
That's
We're kind of going through it,
right.
and the benefits long term is just it's so worth it.
It is.
This is in what you're talking about. We're kind of in this crisis state, but the line I heard recently is we're in a crisis of opportunity. There's so much opportunity that have come from this crisis
Right.
because so many people are exhausted, right? And so we're like, okay, we'll be here and we'll do this, and like, and no one's really stopping us at this point because they're tired.
Because we're all reacting right now. Like if we were so active before, there'll be no crisis, and even if there were crises, we would have already have stop gaps in place to address those crises, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't become this very traumatic thing, right? But
Mhm.
because we are, reactive, and that is again another another aspect of trauma, right? If it happens, we do. If it happens, how about we work on addressing or putting certain things in place so that we don't always have to get to a point where, oh, this is happening. Let's kill everybody, right? Let's not do that. We already know we have had this human experience for a while. The generation before us, the generation before that generation, and we have other generations coming behind us, right? History has a way of repeating itself if we don't learn, right? Why are we not saying, okay, history said this, so in order for us to show growth, right, and
Mhm.
learning on our part, let us not do C, D, and F, right?
Mhm.
Because C, D, and F brought about, history. All right, let's focus more on A and B, right? Let's
Yeah.
focus on A and B so the other ones don't happen. We have the tools. I think we are
Mhm.
growing. The comfort in this for me is that
Mhm.
more and more of us are growing, more and more of us are seeing the proverbial light, more and more.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
and that's evolution. This is what was predicted, and now that we're living in it, we're like, "Is it really here?" Yes.
it is. It
And it's
is.
like, that's the thing is we are all traumatized, but that's okay. Just do it
Right,
anyway. I
right.
mean, what are you gonna spend the rest of your life doing? You're here anyway. And, when we talk about religion,
Right.
This is why it transcends that. It actually doesn't really matter what you believe. You could believe we live multiple lifetimes. You could believe we live this one life and then we're dead. That's it. You could believe that we have one life and then we live in an eternity of, going to wherever we are meant to go. Regardless of what happens, what we can all agree on is we're here now. We exist. We can contemplate that. So why not? Why not be fully alive? Why not do and be everything that you can do and be here now as this person? Because even if you live multiple lives, you'll only have one life as this particular being in this particular point in history.
Right.
And we are very fortunate, as weird as it is to say, to be here at this point in history. We were planted here. We came here on purpose. So this is why we get sick. We feel out of alignment. We can't connect, is because we are trying to deny our own power. When we finally accept it, how powerful we truly are, the way that God, universe, source works through you, it's like, what? And so, like, you know what? It's like, yeah, do everything you do with reverence and care. Every hair on your head will be counted. And also, everything's a cosmic joke.
Yeah.
So have a great time.
Yeah. So I absolutely love that we had this conversation, because a lot of people wonder, and a lot of people, I'm speaking from a place of experience, with a Christian background. It was kind of like, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm doing this. However, it doesn't feel like it's conflict, but there's a bit of, a conflicting feeling. So I like that we brought religion into that, this conversation. Also, something else that I wanted you to please touch on before we end this segment, because it's just this segment. We'll come back another time, guys.
Yeah, we will.
So something quickly, right? So we talked about, feeling when you're out of alignment, right? What is the simplest thing that a person can do to get back in alignment? Because when we talk about meditation, people automatically think Hindu practice, that's the ohms, right?
Yeah.
So what is the one thing? I know I've talked about this on this podcast before. What's the one simplest thing a person can do to realign themselves and connect themselves energetically?
Yes, I will give you what I do. And so that seems to be effective. And that's the thing too, is a lot of us are more Western culture inclined, that our
Right.
evolution of consciousness and spirituality is through the
Right.
logic.
Right.
And so a big thing is we get caught up in our microcosm. We get caught up into the nuances of our day-to-day life. And it's
Right.
overwhelming, and it can feel hopeless. It can be very difficult. Even for the strongest spirited people right now,
Right.
is like, oh, okay, this is a little bit much. And so what I do is, when I'm really caught up in it, I pull out, I like that 30,000 foot view. I move from the microcosm to the macrocosm. I remind myself of that life is fleeting, that we only have this one chance to live today, and not out of fear, but out of how amazing to have this opportunity. And so typically when I get caught up in saying my finances or, anything like the relationships, it goes like, oh my gosh, how amazing is this opportunity to now heal something else? So when we go in with more of a mindset of like, I'm going to heal all the stuff going on in here. Every time a trigger or something comes up, I'm going to let it run through me in a safe way. And that's something that we can definitely talk about another time, because it's a whole other topic of conversation. But it's like, and how can I span back to the greater purpose, the greater meaning of it all, and act accordingly from that seat, instead of all the fear of all the things that are happening or going to happen, because we're all dealing with that. There's so much to navigate and think about and anticipate. And so when we stop doing that,
Right.
and we start just surrendering to the process and take the steps you can take, manage what you can control, and truly forget what you can't, because that's not your job. Trust that God's will is working through other people on that area. Trust that. And it's just focus on what is meaningful to you. What's your mission? What's your purpose? And if you don't know that, your indicator is what comes easily to you and you really like doing.
Right. Right.
That's usually what people undermine the most. And it's usually your greatest talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we're overthinkers. We overthink everything. You know, we love to hyper criticize things. Right. Or what if, what, maybe not, you know, we do that a lot, you know, as humans, and it's very detrimental. So thank you everybody for listening. I will definitely, the show notes is going to have all of Dr. Kristin's information, her expertise. So for anybody who needs to read up more on her, yes, we'll have everything in the show notes, and also how to reach out to her. You can only learn. Again, if it's not for you, it's not for you. However, the resources are there. So if you have a medical practitioner who you can talk openly about this, please do have an open conversation. If it's something that, you know, you would like to incorporate into your treatment plan, please have that conversation. Most practitioners welcome it. Even if you've never had this conversation or you don't know how they may react, it might surprise you to bring up the conversation. It really might surprise you. So you just don't know, because providers don't like to force their beliefs on others. So bring up the conversation, learn, reach out, see what you can find out, and you may surprise yourself. So this was so good. Thank you, Dr. Kristin. Any last word for our folks?
Yeah, take it easy on yourself. Seriously. You know, if you are someone who your intention is to be at peace with others and yourself, you're doing it.
Right.
Okay. You know, and it's like, take it easy on yourself. It's often the people that are the most sensitive, the most evolved, that are the hardest critics on themselves. And so the fact that you're walking this path at all is not for the faint of spirit. And the other side of when you do take the walk of grace and you are willing to go through the trials and tribulations, it is glorious. And so just keep taking that next step. Don't worry about the final destination, just that next step.
Step at a time, one step at a time. I think, Martin Luther King Jr. said something about faith. It's like faith is taking the first step without seeing the staircase. So one step at a time. Every journey begins with a step. I don't care if you're going by boat, you're flying, you're taking a train. You have to take a step outside of your house to get in your car to drive to wherever it is that you're going. So take it easy on you. Like Dr. Kristin said, one step at a time. Life is hard. Being human is harder. So
yeah. I know, but it's funny because as soon as we admit, oh, life is never going to be easy, somehow it becomes easier.
It's the craziest thing.
It's like, finally, okay, fine, I surrender. It's not going to ever be easy, sure. And then all of a sudden it's like, ding, 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 ding. Like, oh.
That's because you surrender. I think we fight, and when you surrender, things kind of like fall into place. So
yeah, you can't fake it. It's like God's like, I see you, I am you. Like
I draw a lot of parallels. I'll talk to myself or about myself. I draw a lot of parallels between myself and Jonah in the Bible.
Yes, that is such a good example.
I have done all kinds of running. I've minimized myself to fit in spaces that did not deserve me. And every single time I get whacked, it's like, have you learned now? Maybe, let me go back into this space. Every single time. I draw a lot of parallels. I'm like, okay, let me stop being a Jonah. What is a version of Jonah? Jonah. Let me stop being a Jonah.
Yeah, the elevated version. And so it's like, that's exactly it. It's like this contortionist piece is like, oh, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. So I'm going to pretend I'm like you. And it's like, oh, we don't get to do that anymore. Nope. You don't get to play small anymore.
No.
Not even an option.
Nope.
That's it. And I think that's the biggest transition that people that are evolving are going through right now is the call is here. It's time to be seen.
Yes.
It's time to be heard. It's time to speak truth. It's time to speak love. It's time to speak community. And guess what? Yeah, you're going to have to stand the fire.
Let's bring it on.
Don't worry, you become fortified. You will not be burned anymore. Yeah, it's like, we got this. It is safe, but for so long it was not.
Yeah.
But now it's safe. So this is the time.
Yeah.
We're not waiting for something.
No.
This is it.
It's done.
Yeah.
Done. Finito. Done pretending, done playing small, done squeezing ourselves into small packages. So this is great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please engage. Let us know what you think. If you resonated with anything we said today, we would love to hear from you. If anything, feels right, anything feels like, okay, expand on that, we would love to come back and have these conversations. And it's great having this opportunity again to meet with you, Dr. Kristin. Oh my goodness.
So
Just want to reach over and hug you.
I know. Friends.
So this was a great conversation. I so hope and pray that this touched somebody and this spoke to somebody and this meant something to somebody, at least one thing we said. So forgive yourself. Life is tough, but also remember, you have a purpose. You were here for a purpose. Live in your purpose. All right. Thank you, everybody. It was great being here. Thank you, Dr. Kristin.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.